Hello there, happy Money Monday, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Abundant podcast. This week on the podcast, we are talking about habits that stick and how to make habits stick. Now, why is this important? It's important because when it comes to creating and building your most abundant life, we actually do that through the actions that we take. And I've talked more about this in previous episodes about it's more the energy behind the action that matters more than the action itself. But also, it's really important to hone in on the actual actions that we are taking. If you want to have an abundant life where you go on morning walks and you travel and take vacations and you run your thriving business, there are certain actions that you need to take in order to live that life. If you want to be someone where in your vision you take morning walks regularly, you need to be somebody who takes morning walks regularly. So the actions that you take create the life that you are living. So this is where we come to habits. There are so many habits that are part of our abundant life, things that we should be doing, but for whatever reason we don't do them, we put them off, and really this blocks our ability to actually create the life that we want to live. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about what causes us to not follow through on habits, especially ones that are important to us, and how do we shift our relationship to habits so that we can have habits that actually stick. But before we dive into this topic, I have to let you know that right now I am doing a special giveaway for the podcast. Right now you have the chance to enter to win a $100 Amazon gift card simply by leaving a rating and review on the Empowered Abundance podcast. To enter to win is super easy. It just takes 3 steps. One is to go to the Empowered and Abundant podcast on Apple or Spotify, leave a rating and review, take a screenshot of that review and email it to me at scarlett@thebizhippie.com to officially submit yourself for entry. I will go ahead and in the show notes below include my email address and those 3 steps. It only takes you 2 minutes, and then you have the chance to win a $100 gift card just by showing some love and tuning into this podcast episode you're already listening to right now. So, the opportunity to submit yourself to enter to win closes on March 15th at midnight, and I will announce the winner on March 16th. So pause this episode now and take 2 minutes to leave your review and email me the screenshot. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive into habits that stick. Now, the way that I like to think about this is that habits that click are habits that stick. There is something inside of us that really needs to click in order to develop habits that last for the long haul. Now, I think there are 2 kinds of habits, there are 2 ways that habits are instilled. One is the kind of habit where it's something you don't really want to do, but it's important and you want to try it. So you force yourself to do it. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of willpower. But eventually you keep doing it. And eventually that habit gets ingrained, and then it just becomes second nature. And then you get comfortable with it. You get used to it. And then it just becomes a habit or a routine. And I think this is the way most people look at habits, the way most people view habits, and most people's relationships with habits often looks like this. These kinds of habits, they take a lot of energy, and it's really easy to fall off the wagon. And when you fall off the wagon of that habit, it can also be hard to get back on again and keep going. It's easy to convince yourself I lost it. I'll start again another day. Or, I lost my streak. So what's the point anymore? And it's hard to really keep those habits going. You can do it and it can work, but it requires a lot of willpower, energy, and it's hard. Versus there's another way that habits can be instilled. And I'm curious if you've ever experienced this for yourself, if you can think of examples of this. And that is when maybe you know you want to have this habit. Maybe you've been thinking about it for a while, but you haven't really done it. You haven't really developed it. And then one day, something just clicks into place. And you're all of a sudden, you're like, yep, I'm going to do this habit now. And you just start it and you keep going. And suddenly it was really easy. It didn't take that much effort. It just is all of a sudden who you are. It's a habit that clicked. And it's therefore a habit that sticks. And I have had so many examples of this specific habit style happening in my own life. For example, I used to never floss my teeth for years and years. And then one day I said, you know what? I'm going to floss. And then I started flossing and then I never stopped. And now I'm somebody who flosses. Also, at one point, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go on a morning walk. And then I went on a morning walk, and now I'm someone who goes on morning walks. And every single day I wake up, I leave my house, I go on a half-hour morning walk. It's like the first thing that I do, and I love it. It's such a vital part of my routine, but it wasn't like a hard habit that I had to instill over time. I just decided, you know what? I'm going to do this, and all of a sudden I started doing it. Also, when I first started practicing yoga for the first time, for many, many years, my mom was big into yoga. She's been practicing yoga almost my whole entire life. And when I was a teenager, she'd be like, come with me to yoga. And I was like, no, I hate yoga. Yoga is stupid. Like, don't make me come with you. And then one day in my young adulthood, probably it was like 21, one day I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go to a yoga practice. And I went to a morning yoga practice and I never stopped. I just started doing yoga forever for the rest of my life. Okay, these are examples of habits that click. And this is really important to, one, recognize, like, where has this happened in your life? Where have you had habits that once were really hard to instill, but then all of a sudden just like happened seemingly out of the blue? Can you think of any of those examples? And I'm curious, before I share with you why I believe this happens and how we can create more habits like this, is why do you think that happened? What was it that shifted for you that gave you these habits that suddenly clicked and therefore stuck for the long haul? And this is important to understand the process behind these habits because it can be useful for all areas of your life, not just like the household areas of life. Like for me, making bread every other week, making my bed every single day, having a laundry routine where I do laundry start to finish, including folding every single week, meal prepping every single week. Like, these are just habits and routines that I've developed now. And yes, some of those were a little harder to develop over time, but most of those were easy. I was just like, yep, I'm going to be somebody that makes bread. And then I just started doing that. It wasn't hard. It didn't take a lot of effort, just is who I am. But then this also can bleed into your business. Yes, it can. Because I remember when I first started my business, there was a lot of habits I was trying to instill, like being consistent on Instagram and sending regular emails, especially around any form of marketing or content creation. It's preaching to the choir to say consistency is so important. Showing up regularly is important. And when I first started my business, it was really hard for me to do that. My energy, my momentum, building that habit was all over the place. But then later on in business, now I can decide to do something new and it just happens and it's easy and it becomes a habit and it becomes a routine that just clicks. Like this podcast that you're listening to right now. 1 year ago, I decided, you know what? I feel the inspiration. I feel the call. I'm ready to have a podcast. I made the decision and now I have a podcast. And I have released an episode every single week for the past year without fail. There's never been a week that I've missed, even with travel, even with, just building building this new habit into my routine. I just built it into my routine and implemented it. This also just happened a few weeks ago when I decided I wanted to try out sending a video newsletter each week to the people on my email list, like an exclusive 10-minute, what am I working on? What's going on inside my brain, and here's some deep advice that I'm not sharing anywhere else. I felt the inspiration to do that. I made the decision, and now I do that. And it's been several weeks in a row where I've released this video newsletter without missing a beat. Okay, so this really ties into your business in big ways, because when you are able to master the practice of habits that click, and therefore have habits that stick, it saves you a lot of time and energy to not be in this like, I gotta do this, I gotta force myself to do it, or I'm missing weeks of doing the thing that I said I was gonna do, and now it takes so much energy and effort for me to get back on track and get the momentum going, versus simply making a decision about something and then moving the needle forward. So it just becomes a part of your routine. It just becomes who you are and doesn't take that much effort. Okay, so let's talk about this. What causes a habit to click? Now, this is a concept we talk about a lot in the Empowered Abundance program, and we go really deep into it. But I will share a short, quick version here so that we can understand this concept, and that is looking at the different parts of ourselves within us. This is the theory that we all have different parts within us. We have the inner critic, we have the inner child. These parts are becoming more mainstream, more common. People talk about them all the time, but there's also other selves, right? There's the like the boss babe who's a go-getter, the achiever, the perfectionist self. There's the like whiny teenager self. There's hundreds of different selves, and everyone has their own unique concoction of selves, but we all have different selves, different parts within us that want different things. And we actually know this. We talk about this all the time, where we'll say, yeah, one part of me wants to go to the gym, but another part wants to just sit here and watch Netflix. Normal, right? We have different parts with different desires, different needs, different beliefs, and often these parts can be conflicting, especially in this example. If one part wants to go to the gym, but another part wants to watch Netflix, who wins that battle? And that decides the action that you take, is which selves are driving the bus. Now, the difference between habits that are sticky and challenging and hard, and it takes a lot of effort to try and instill them, versus having habits that click, is between the selves. If you have multiple selves that are in conflict, that are fighting each other, that have different desires and different needs, and there's not a resolution that happens there, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of effort. And this is why we can self-sabotage ourselves when we're trying to instill new habits or new practices or new routines, or we're trying to work towards something and achieve something, and then, something self-sabotages and we don't follow through. That's a selves issue, right? Or when it feels like we're trying to instill a new habit, but it takes so much effort, and then we fall off the wagon and we have to get back on again, and we have to convince ourselves, and it's so hard. This is because we have multiple selves within us that are literally fighting each other. There are parts of you that don't want this habit. They don't want to get on board. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the thing. They don't want to put in the effort, and those selves are fighting within you the parts of you that do. And this is what can make taking new action, instilling new habits, instilling new routines really, really hard. And especially, I see this in Empowered Abundance all the time when it comes to learning to manage, track, wield, and be in control of your money. That's a key thing that we practice in Empowered Abundance, is being really strategic and intentional and conscious with your money, being able to wield your money as a tool for creating your most abundant life. And in order to do that, you have to develop the habit and the routine of looking at, managing, and tracking your money. But for a lot of my clients, this is really challenging. It takes a lot of effort. It's really hard to develop this routine. And this is because we have a lot of parts of us that don't want to. And these parts have a lot of beliefs around the habit and what it means. For example, we think it's going to be hard, it's going to be so confusing and complicated, it's going to take so much time, it's going to take so much effort. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to be stressed out about what I see. It's going to cause me discomfort, it's going to cause me suffering. Whereas if I just ignore it, I don't have to put that time into it, that energy, that effort. I can just blissfully keep my head in the sand and pretend like everything's fine. I don't need to change. I can keep living my life. That really sounds like the better option. Right? And so this creates an inner conflict because on the one hand, because we have all these beliefs about the habit in itself, and a lot of the parts of us feel a certain way about it and want to protect us from feeling negative feelings and want to protect us and wants to save us time and energy and want to focus on things that we enjoy. It makes it really hard to instill the new habit in the new practice, even when there's parts of you that genuinely wants to do it. And of course there are parts of you that genuinely want to do it because you know logically, this is the work I need to do, this is the next step, this is part of my growth. Of course I want to learn to wield my money, especially if you are one of my clients or you've gone through Empowered Abundance before. You invested in the program for a reason, right? You know you want to do this work, but it's hard because not all of you wants to do it. So when we have habits that click, the habits are clicking because we don't have this internal selves conflict. Or if we do, it's such a minimal amount of conflict that we're able to resolve it very quickly and simply start taking the action. Simply start becoming the person who just has the new routine and has the new habit. We're no longer wasting time or energy on fighting within ourselves and having this internal battle and conflict and debate. And instead, all of that energy just goes towards implementing the thing. So not only does it make instilling the habit very easy and seamless, but also it actually creates more time, more energy, more momentum than when you have a habit you're trying to instill, but it literally feels like you're fighting yourself and it feels really, really hard. That makes the habit really hard to instill, and it affirms the beliefs that it's hard, it takes so much effort, it takes so much energy, I'm so exhausted. Yeah, well, of course you are, because by the time you get to the place where you forced yourself to do the thing, it's taken so much energy because not only did you have to do the thing, you also had to fight yourself to get there. Right? It's like when you go to the gym and you're like, oh, I hate going to the gym. This sucks. This is stupid. I don't want to be here. And you're really letting those selves that don't like the thing take up a lot of brain space and effort and energy, but you're still doing it. You're still going to the gym. When you leave the gym, you might not feel that great. Or throughout your whole experience there, you might not feel that great. You might be dreading it, regretting it the whole time. So what happens when we have sticky, challenging habits like this is we are fighting ourselves. It takes a lot of energy. Hopefully, the parts of us that actually want the habit win over time. Hopefully, they keep winning the battles and we keep doing it enough. We keep instilling the new habit or routine enough that eventually it proves to the old selves that are fighting you that, oh, actually, this is a good thing. Actually, I do feel better when I go to the gym. Actually, it's not that bad. And eventually, over time, they pick up enough evidence and belief where they start to chill out. And the parts of you that actually do enjoy the habit and the routine, those increase. And the dial is turned up there. And that's when you finally start to build momentum and routine. This is when it takes a habit a long time to build, but then eventually it becomes second nature. Is because those selves eventually balance out and everybody gets on board. But it's like you had to convince those selves over a long extended period of time. Versus what happens when we get those selves on board at the beginning So you're no longer fighting yourself. You're just making a decision to do something, and mostly everybody's on board. So then all the energy just goes into doing it and implementing it. These are habits that click. Okay? So, for example, I'm going to give you a few stories of habits that have clicked for me. I told you at the beginning, I floss my teeth now. There was so many years that I didn't floss my teeth, and I would go to my dentist for my whatever dental checkup, and they would ask me, "Do you floss?" And I would say no. And this would be a regular routine with my dentist. So one day I went to the dentist and they asked me, "Do you floss?" And I said no. And I felt awkward and ashamed and like, oh, I've done something wrong. And I just felt like all those feelings that I had every single time I told my dentist, like, no, I haven't flossed. And that discomfort, seeing that discomfort clearly, shifted something in me where I said, you know what? I never want to feel this way again. The next time I come to the dentist and they ask me if I floss, I want to say yes because I'm sick of having this conversation. And what happened was in that moment, having that realization, the discomfort of saying, no, I don't floss, became more powerful than the discomfort of putting in the effort, right? Of wasting the time and energy into being somebody who flosses and building that into my routine. And suddenly the weight of having the weight of that discomfort, the weight of saying, no, I don't floss, became more significant, became more heavy than the weight of putting in the effort of flossing. And in that moment, all those parts of me just got on board where I was like, yeah, it's worthwhile to floss because I never want to have this conversation again. And so I just made the decision, and then I became someone who started flossing. And it was simply a decision because all of me was on board because I had that thought, I never want to have this conversation again. The next time I come to the dentist and they ask me if I floss, I want to say yes. And then the real irony of that story is the next time I went to the dentist, no one asked me if I flossed, which is really, really funny. So that's one example. It's the same with when I decided to start going on morning walks. Something within me clicked. Now, about a year before I started going on morning walks, I was in a coaching program, and one of the things in that coaching program was going on walks. And we were told, go on walks. And I didn't really implement it. I would go on an occasional forest walk from time to time, but it wasn't a key part of my routine. But then, flash forward a while later, what was the thought that got all my selves on board to walking? And that thought was, at the time I was working at a restaurant while also growing my business. I was waitressing tables in order to have enough income to support myself and also continue to invest in my business while my business was growing. And one of the benefits of working at the restaurant was I would be on my feet for 8 to 11 hours a day straight, and I would get in 20,000 steps in one day. And so there were some parts of me that would miss walking. When I implement the plan to leave the restaurant, in the future, I'm going to no longer walk, and walking and moving my body is important to me. And I like that when I'm working at the restaurant, I actually am standing for long periods of time. And so I realized that if my goal was to leave the restaurant, that I would need to make up for that benefit at some point, and that I would need to get my steps in elsewhere. So then it was just a simple decision to say, oh, okay, well, walking is important to me. So let me start walking now in my day-to-day life so that when I do leave the restaurant, it's no big deal because I already have instilled this habit for myself. This is another practice that we talk about in Empowered Abundance about how can you satisfy like the benefits of your current situation so that you can let it go. And that thought process helped me get all my selves on board, where I was like, yes, of course I'm going to walk. This just makes perfect sense. It's easy. I'm just going to implement it and instill it and then do it. And then when I did leave the restaurant, now I had this beautiful habit already instilled for I do get my steps in every day. So it was okay. It was easy for me to leave that restaurant job. Okay, these are habits that click. And sometimes this happens to us and we don't even realize that this is what's happening. It just happens under the surface. One day we're like, oh, that habit that I've been trying to do forever, all of a sudden I did it and now I'm not going back. And it's like because something inside of us clicked. The benefits of the habit outweigh the cost of implementing the habit in the first place. One other example is when I used to drink when I was younger. And by the time I turned 21, I started getting the worst hangovers ever. And I would be out for a whole day after the fact of drinking with a migraine and throwing up. And there have been times where I lost whole days after drinking, and it was just really, really bad. But I would still drink from time to time. And I very distinctly remember it waking up one morning hungover and just being like, I never want to feel this way again. This is not worth it to me. The suffering that I feel after the fact of drinking is worse than the benefits of the drinking. And that just clicked for me in that moment. And suddenly all my selves got on board and we were like, sweet, okay, we're not going to drink anymore. And, granted, I'm not like a purist. I occasionally have a glass of beer or wine, but that is it. Like I cannot handle my liquor. I know it. I get the worst hangovers ever and it's not worth it to me. It is not worth it to me. So therefore, it just became a decision. It's not like I have to fight myself to be like, no, don't drink. It's just like, yeah, okay, I know I don't want to be hungover and therefore I'm not going to drink. And it's easy for me to make that decision because all parts of me are on board with that and it's not a priority because the costs outweigh the benefits. And therefore I'm going to choose the habit that actually is in alignment with the life I want to live. So when you start to see habits in this way, it's actually a better use of your time and energy. If you're trying to instill some new habits, especially if they feel sticky or hard, whether it's something in your business, whether it's a big important routine, or whether it's something small like your laundry routine or making the bed every day, whatever it is, if you notice it's sticky to develop this new habit or this routine, instead of being in a push cycle of trying to push yourself, trying to just keep going, trying to be in this energy of instilling it and falling off the wagon, and maybe you feel shame and maybe you feel guilt, and then you got to get back on the wagon, and then you beat yourself up, and instead of spending all of your energy on all of that comes up in the process of instilling a sticky new habit, take a moment to go deeper and say, who are the parts of me that don't want this and why? And what are the potential benefits that these parts believe they have? Because anytime we're instilling a habit, but it's hard, it's because those parts that are stopping us, they're stopping us for a reason. There's something they're gaining from it. There's a benefit they're receiving from it. And can you find out by tapping into yourself, what are those benefits? And can you satisfy those benefits in other ways? Or maybe you can even uncover that there are some thoughts errors and some beliefs that these selves have that are just not true. Like, for example, when it comes to dishes, it is my pet peeve when people leave dishes in the sink, because I believe it takes so much more time and energy when you have a sink full of dishes to then put those dishes in the dishwasher versus taking 2 seconds to put it in the dishwasher right away. Now, the thoughts that some of ourselves may have is, oh, I don't have time to put this in the dishwasher right now. I'm just going to leave it in the sink and do it later. It's a time belief. But the reality is it actually takes so much more time to do it when you do it all at once versus just doing it every single time you use the dish. And starting to see these thought errors clearly, that changes the perspective of the selves that are holding us back. This is the same when it comes to managing your money. One of the biggest reasons why people struggle to instill that habit of managing the money is because we have all these thoughts and expectations of it's going to be so hard, it's going to take so much effort, it's going to be uncomfortable and challenging. And like, yeah, some of those things might be true because it's a new habit that you're instilling for the first time. But at the same time, what if it actually isn't that hard? What if it's easier? What if when you do it now, it's actually way easier than you think versus continuing to put it off and letting things get harder and harder in the future? And our expectations of time and effort and energy are totally inaccurate. That's one of the reasons why these selves have control and power and make it hard for us to instill new habits, is because they exaggerate the level of effort or energy or discomfort that we have to face in order to instill the new habit. But it's really not true. Like, going back to the dishes example, I know that I would rather empty a clean dishwasher than have to deal with a sink full of dirty dishes. Because if the dishwasher is empty, then I can just keep putting dishes in the dishwasher. And I know that that's the bottleneck. I know that if the dishwasher is full of clean dishes, then I can't put dishes directly into the dishwasher. So it's actually way faster for me in the middle of my day, in between meetings, when I, quote, don't have time to empty the dishwasher, to just do the dang thing and empty the dishwasher, because I know that it is actually faster in the long run. It's actually worthwhile in the long run. And even it's more enjoyable in the long run than doing it another way. And so it's continuing to affirm these beliefs, look at it from this other perspective of reality, of what is actually easier, and use that as evidence to get all parts of you on board. And when all parts of you are on board, habits simply click. And then those habits stick. You don't have to work hard to ingrain these habits. They simply just become who you are. And that is such a powerful skill to develop, is how can you make decisions that just become habits and become routine and last for the long term? Because that is how you create your abundant life, is you just decide to become the person who's living your vision and make decisions that support that. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time and effort to instill these routines and habits. All the effort goes into implementing them. And that saves you so much time and energy in the long run, where you can do more and more. And it just becomes part of who you are. And this is what creates your most abundant life. Okay, that's what I have for you this week on the Empowered and Abundant podcast. Habits that click are habits that stick. And just as a reminder, now's the time to submit your entry for the $100 Amazon gift card giveaway by taking 2 minutes to leave a review on the podcast. Leave a rating, leave a review on Spotify and Apple. Take a screenshot and email it to me at scarlett@thebizhippie.com to submit yourself for entry. The opportunity ends March 15th at midnight. All the information, the email address, is in the show notes below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Money Monday, and I will see you next week.